So today's lesson, we will read a short story by Ray Bradbury titled A Sound of Thunder. It's in your literature textbook and it begins on page 33. And I will read the story in two parts since it's pretty long. A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. Would you visit the past if you could? Imagine that you could board a time machine and travel into the past. In A Sound of Thunder, the main character does just that. His journey, however, has unexpected consequences. In this story, the literary focus is on foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a writer's use of hints or clues to suggest events that will happen later in a story. By using this technique, Bradbury creates suspense, which in turn makes his readers want to know what will happen next. Foreshadowing often occurs when a character makes an unusual statement or issues a strong warning, as in the following example. So be careful, stay on the path, never step off. Watch for other examples of foreshadowing as you read Bradbury's story. Also, please pay attention to the plot. Analyzing sequence. A story about time travel presents some interesting challenges. If you were to create a timeline to track the character's travels, it would go backward and then forward again. Yet, the events in the story are presented in the order in which they happen to the characters. As you read the story, keep track of the sequence of events by creating a chart like the one shown. Record important events before, during, and after the time safari. And you can see your chart should have three columns. One should be labeled before, then during, and the third column after. For example, in the first one, you might write, Eccles prepares to travel back in time to hunt dinosaurs. So then you will explain here what happens during that time and then after. You also have vocabulary worksheets. So when I read the story one time, then you will go back and reread the story again. But before you read it, please complete your vocabulary worksheets. And then after you have completed the story, you can then complete all of your comprehension and reading worksheets. All right, let's read about the author's background. As I said before, his name is Ray Bradbury, and he was born in 1920. He has since passed away. A major writer in the genres of science fiction and fantasy, Ray Bradbury explores the future, outer space, and the human heart. Over his long career, he had lived to see much science fiction become science fact. His most chilling stories comment on the human consequences of progress and often reflect the ironies of life. Bradbury fervently believes in the importance of reading. I didn't go to college, but when I graduated from high school, I went down to the local library, he has said. For 10 years, Bradbury spent 2 or 3 days each week reading in the local public library in Los Angeles, California. The master of science fiction writes his stories on a typewriter rather than a computer. He scorns the internet, and he has never even driven a car. Still, Bradbury is a strong advocate of space travel because he views it as life-enhancing. Time travel has been a popular idea in science fiction ever since the British author H.G. Wells wrote his short novel, The Time Machine, in 1895. In the novel, Wells suggested that in addition to the 3 dimensions of length, height, and width, there was a 4th dimension of duration or time. Wells speculated that if a machine could be invented to move along the fourth dimension, travel backward and forward in time would be possible. I don't know why, but the first page is not visible on the PDF. So you will have to follow along with me on the first page of the story in your book. A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. The sign on the wall seemed to quiver under a film of sliding warm water. Eccles felt his eyelids blink over his stare, and the sign burned in his momentary darkness. Time Safari in Cooperation. Safaris to any year in the past. You name the animal, we take you there. You shoot it. A warm phlegm gathered in Eccles' throat. He swallowed and pushed it down. The muscles around his mouth formed a smile as he put his hand slowly out upon the air. And in that hand waved a check for $10,000 to the man behind the desk. Does this safari guarantee I come back alive? We guarantee nothing, said the official, except the dinosaurs. He turned. This is Mr. Travis, your safari guide in the past. He'll tell you what and where to shoot. If he says no shooting, no shooting. If you disobey instructions, there's a stiff penalty or punishment of another $10,000 plus possible government action on your return. All right, if you notice in the right-hand side of the page, you have questions. After you complete reading each page, you need in your reading notebook to answer these questions. All right, the first one, foreshadowing. Reread lines 13 through 18. What might the man's warning to Eccles foreshadow? So let's discuss this first one together. This warning foreshadows the possibility of dangerous events during the safari. Because as we read, it says, for there is no guarantee that Eccles will come back alive. The mention of a penalty or punishment also foreshadows the possibility that someone may disobey instructions. Eccles glanced across the vast office at a mass and tangle, a snaking and humming of wires and steel boxes, at an aurora that flickered, now orange, now silver, now blue. There was a sound like a gigantic bonfire, burning all of time, all the years and all the parchment calendars, all the hours piled high and set aflame. A touch of the hand and this burning would on the instant beautifully reverse itself. Eccles remembered the wording in the advertisement to the letter. Out of chars and ashes, out of dust and coals, like golden salamanders, the old years, the green years, might leap. Roses sweeten the air. White hair turn Irish black. Wrinkles vanish. All, everything fly back to seed. Flee death. Rush down to their beginnings. Suns rise in western skies and set in glorious east. Moons eat themselves opposite to the custom. All and everything cupping one in another like Chinese boxes. Rabbits into hats. All and everything returning to the fresh death, the seed death, the green death, to the time before the beginning. A touch of a hand might do it, the merest touch of a hand. So here he is explaining that just by the mere touch of someone's hand, they will travel back in time, and all of these things here will flash before his eyes. Unbelievable, Eccles breathed, the light of the machine on his thin face. A real time machine. He shook his head. Makes you think. If the election had gone badly yesterday, I might be here now running away from the results. Thank God Keith won. He'll make a fine president of the United States. So in this paragraph, this is right before they have taken off on the time machine to go back in the past. The day before this, there was an election for the president, okay? And the guy that won was named Keith. And Eccles says that he will make a fine president of the United States. The next paragraph explains why they feel this way. Yes, said the man behind the desk, we're lucky. If Dutcher had gotten in, we'd have the worst kind of dictatorship. There's an anti-everything man for you, a militarist, anti-Christ, anti-human, anti-intellectual. People called us up, you know, joking but not joking. Said if Dutcher became president, they wanted to go live in 1492. Of course, it's not our business to conduct escapes, but to form safaris. Anyway, Keith's president now. All you got to worry about is shooting my dinosaur. Eccles finished it for him. A Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard, the most incredible monster in history. Sign this release. Anything happens to you, we're not responsible. Those dinosaurs are hungry. Eccles flushed angrily. Trying to scare me? Frankly, yes. We don't want anyone going who'll panic at the first shot. 6 safari leaders were killed last year and a dozen hunters. We're here to give you the severest thrill a real hunter ever asked for. Traveling you back 60 million years to bag the biggest game in all of time. Your personal check's still there. Tear it up. Mr. Eccles looked at the check. His fingers twitched. Good luck, said the man behind the desk. Mr. Travis, he's all yours. They moved silently across the room, taking their guns with them toward the machine, toward the silver metal and the roaring light. First a day, and then a night, and then a day, and then a night. Then it was day, night, day, night, day. A week, a month, a year, a decade. AD 2055, AD 2019, 1999, 1957. Gone, the machine roared. They put on their oxygen helmets and tested the intercoms. Eccles swayed on the padded seat, his face pale, his jaw stiff. He felt the trembling in his arms, and he looked down and found his hands tight on the new rifle. There were 4 other men in the machine. Travis, the safari leader, his assistants, Lesperance, and 2 other hunters, Billings and Kramer. They sat looking at each other, and the years blazed around them. Can these guns kill a dinosaur cold? Eccles felt his mouth saying. If you hit them right, said Travis on the helmet radio. Some dinosaurs have 2 brains, one in the head, another far down the spinal column. We stay away from those. That's stretching luck. Put your first 2 shots into the eyes if you can. Blind them and go back into the brain. The machine howled. Time was a film run backward. Suns fled and 10 million moons fled after them. Think, said Eccles, every hunter that ever lived would envy us today. This makes Africa seem like Illinois. The machine slowed. Its scream fell to a murmur. The machine stopped. The sun stopped in the sky. The fog that had enveloped the machine blew away, and they were in old time, a very old time indeed. 3 hunters and 2 safari heads with their blue metal guns across their knees. Christ isn't born yet, said Travis. Moses has not gone to the mountain to talk with God. The pyramids are still in the earth, waiting to be cut out and put up. Remember that. Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, none of them exist. So he's explaining that they are so far back in time that none of this has even happened yet in the world. The man nodded. That, Mr. Travis pointed, is the jungle of 60,002,055 years before President Keith. He indicated a metal path that struck off into green wilderness, over streaming swamps, among giant ferns and palms. And that, he said, is the path laid by Time Safari for your use. It floats 6 inches above the earth, doesn't touch so much as one grass blade, flower, or tree. It's an anti-gravity metal. Its purpose is to keep you from touching this world of the past in any way. Stay on the path. Don't go off it. I repeat, don't go off for any reason. If you fall off, there's a penalty. And don't shoot any animal we don't okay. Why? Asked Eccles. They said in the ancient wilderness, 4 birds' cries blew on the wind, and the smell of tar and old salt sea, moist grasses and flowers the color of blood. Okay, so here, one of the questions asks, what might Travis's warning to the hunters foreshadow, and how does his warning create suspense? Okay, so by Travis warning him over and over again about not stepping off the path, we can conclude that someone will probably go off the path. The warning creates suspense because the reader wonders who will do so, why, and what the consequences will be. He continues, we don't want to change the future. We don't belong here in the past. The government doesn't like us here. We have to pay big graft to keep our franchise. A time machine is finicky business. Not knowing it, we might kill an important animal, a small bird, a roach, a flower even, thus destroying an important link in a growing species. That's not clear, said Eccles. All right, Travis continued. Say we accidentally kill one mouse here. That means all the future families of this one particular mouse are destroyed, right? Right. And all the families of the families of the families of that one mouse. With a stamp of your foot, you annihilate first 1, then a dozen, then 1,000, 1,000,000, 1 billion possible mice. So they're dead, said Eccles. So what? So what? Travis snorted quietly. Well, what about the foxes that'll need those mice to survive? For want of 10 mice, a fox dies. For want of 10 foxes, a lion starves. For want of a lion, all manner of insects, vultures, infinite billions of life forms are thrown into chaos and destruction. Eventually, it all boils down to this. 59 million years later, a caveman, one of a dozen in the entire world, goes hunting wild boar or saber-toothed tiger for food. But you, friend, have stepped on all the tigers in that region by stepping on one single mouse. So the caveman starves. And the caveman, please note, is not just any expendable man. No, he is an entire future nation. From his loins would have sprung 10 sons. From their loins, 100 sons, and thus onward to a civilization. Destroy this one man, and you destroy a race, a people, an entire history of life. It is comparable to slaying some of Adam's grandchildren. The stump of your foot on one mouse could start an earthquake, the effects of which could shake our earth and destinies down through time to their very foundations. With the death of that one caveman, a billion others yet unborn are throttled in the womb. Perhaps Rome never rises on its 7 hills. Perhaps Europe is forever a dark forest, and only Asia waxes healthy and teeming. Step on a mouse and you crush the pyramids. Step on a mouse and you leave your print like a Grand Canyon across eternity. Queen Elizabeth might never be born. Washington might not cross the Delaware. There might never be a United States at all. So be careful, stay on the path, never step off. I see, said Eccles. Then it wouldn't pay for us even to touch the grass. Correct. Crushing certain plants could add up infamously. A little error here would multiply in 60 million years, all out of proportion. Of course, maybe our theory is wrong. Maybe time can't be changed by us. Or maybe it can be changed only in little subtle ways. A dead mouse here makes an insect imbalance. There. A population disproportion later. A bad harvest further on. A depression, mass starvation, and finally a change in social temperament in far-flung countries. Something much more subtle like that. Perhaps only a soft breath, a whisper, a hair, pollen on the air, such a slight change that unless you look close, you wouldn't see. Who knows? Who really can say he knows? We don't know, we're guessing. But until we do know for certain whether our messing around in time can make a big roar or a little rustle in history, we're being careful. This machine, this path, your clothing and bodies were sterilized, as you know, before the journey. We wear these oxygen helmets so we can't introduce our bacteria into an ancient atmosphere. How do we know which animals to shoot? They're marked with red paint, said Travis. Today, before our journey, we sent Lesperance here, back with the machine. He came to this particular era and followed certain animals. Studying them? Right, said Lesperance. I tracked them through their entire existence, noting which of them lives longest. Very few. How many times they mate? Not often. Life short. When I find one that's going to die when a tree falls on him, or one that drowns in a tar pit, I note the exact hour, minute, and second. I shoot a paint bomb. It leaves a red patch on his side. We can't miss it. Then I correlate our arrival in the past so that we meet the monster not more than 2 minutes before he would have died anyway. This way, we kill only animals with no future that are never going to mate again. You see how careful we are? But if you came back this morning in time, said Eccles eagerly, you must have bumped into us, our safari. How did it turn out? Was it successful? Did all of us get through alive? Travis and Lesperance gave each other a look. That'd be a paradox, said the latter. Time doesn't permit that sort of mess, a man meeting himself. When such occasion threatens, Time steps aside, like an airplane hitting an air pocket. You felt the machine jump just before we stopped? That was us passing ourselves on the way back to the future. We saw nothing. There's no way of telling if this expedition was a success, if we got our monster, or whether all of us, meaning you, Mr. Eccles, got out alive. You can see here on the sidebar that a paradox is a noun, and it's a statement or an event that sounds impossible, but seems to be true. So this is what he meant when he told Eccles that passing yourself in time would be a paradox. Excuse me. Eccles smiled palely. "Cut that," said Travis sharply. Everyone on his feet. They were ready to leave the machine. The jungle was high, and the jungle was broad, and the jungle was the entire world forever and forever. Sounds like music and sounds like flying tents fill the sky. And those were the pterodactyls soaring with cavernous gray wings, gigantic bats of delirium and night fever. Eccles, balanced on the narrow path, aimed his rifle playfully. "Stop that," said Travis. "Don't even aim for fun, blast you. If your gun should go off." Eccles flushed. "Where's our Tyrannosaurus?" Lespers checked his wristwatch. "Up ahead. We'll bisect his trail in 60 seconds. Look for the red paint. Don't shoot till we give the word. Stay on the path. Stay on the path." They moved forward in the wind of morning. "Strange," murmured Eccles. "Up ahead, 60 million years. Election day over. Keith made president. Everyone celebrating. And here we are, a million years lost, and they don't even exist. The things we worried about for months, a lifetime, not even born or thought of yet." "Safety catches off, everyone," ordered Travis. "You first shot, Eccles. Second Billings. Third Kramer." "I've hunted tiger, wild boar, buffalo, elephant, but now this is it," said Eccles. "I'm shaking like a kid." "Ah," said Travis. Everyone stopped. Travis raised his hand ahead. He whispered, "In the mist, there he is. There's His Royal Highness. There's His Royal Majesty now." The jungle was wide and full of twitterings, rustlings, murmurs, and sighs. Suddenly, it all ceased or stopped as if someone had shut a door. Silence, a sound of thunder. Out of the mist, 100 yards away, came Tyrannosaurus Rex. "It," whispered Eccles, "it, shh." It came on great, oiled, resilient, striding legs. It towered 30 feet above half of the trees, a great evil god, folding its delicate watchmaker's claws close to its oily reptilian chest. Each lower leg was a piston, 1,000 pounds of white bone, sunk in thick ropes of muscle, sheathed over in a gleam of pebbled skin, like the mail of a terrible warrior. Each thigh was a ton of meat, ivory and steel mesh. And from the great breathing cage of the upper body, those two delicate arms dangled out front. Arms with hands which might pick up and examine men like toys, while the snake neck coiled. And the head itself, a ton of sculptured stone, lifted easily upon the sky. Its mouth gaped, exposing a fence of teeth like daggers. Its eyes rolled, ostrich eggs, empty of all expression save hunger. It closed its mouth in a death grin. It ran, its pelvic bones crushing aside trees and bushes, its taloned feet clawing damp earth, leaving prints 6 inches deep wherever it settled its weight. It ran with a gliding ballet step, far too poised and balanced for its 10 tons. It moved into a sunlit arena warily, its beautifully reptilian hands filling the air. Why, Eccles twitched his mouth. It could reach up and grab the moon. Shh, Travis jerked angrily. He hasn't seen us yet. It can't be killed, Eccles pronounced this verdict quite quietly, as if there could be no argument. He had weighed the evidence, and this was his considered opinion. The rifle in his hands seemed a cap gun. We were fools to come. This is impossible. Shut up, hissed Travis. Nightmare. Turn around, commanded Travis. Walk quietly to the machine. We'll remit 1/2 your fee. I didn't realize it would be this big, said Eccles. I miscalculated, that's all, and now I want out. It sees us. There's the red paint on his chest. The tyrant lizard raised itself. Its armored flesh glittered like 1,000 green coins. The coins crusted with slime, steamed. In the slime, tiny insects wriggled so that the entire body seemed to twitch and undulate, even while the monster itself did not move. It exhaled. The stink of raw flesh blew down the wilderness. Get me out of here, said Eccles. It was never like this before. I was always sure I would come through alive. I had good guides, good safaris, and safety. This time I figured wrong. I've met my match and admit it. This is too much for me to get hold of. Don't run, said Lesperance. Turn around, hide in the machine. Yes, Eccles seemed to be numb. He looked at his feet as if trying to make them move. He gave a grunt of helplessness. All right, for part 1, we will stop here and we will continue in the next session with part 2.